Hi, I'm Dan Peach. I'm a software engineer at Armory. I've been working on and with Spinnaker for the past 4.5 years, and wanted to talk to you about the ways to get started developing a UI plugin, the available options, and hopefully by the end of this talk, you'll be able to answer the question, what's possible to develop as a UI plugin. So just to sort of set a baseline, because people come to the project and they're not sure sort of what they're working with. Spinnaker's UI is called Deck. It's a big code base. It's in the process of a migration from Angular 1 to React, from JavaScript to TypeScript. Working with people developing Deck for the first time, it's often not clear to them which way the arrows are going here. Deck has a bunch of different modules, each published as a different NPM package. Generally speaking, there's the cloud provider specific modules, so at Spinnaker, Amazon, at Spinnaker, Kubernetes, so on. And then there's the core module, which includes pretty much everything else. One thing to understand here is that Deck was built with pluggability in mind. You can think of each of these cloud provider modules as in some way plugins, not sort of in the same way that the plugin framework exists today and plugins exist today, but the code paths that they use to extend Deck have been around for years. They're well worn, and you can use them inside your plugins. So getting started, one of the best parts about UI plugin development is that the developer environment is very good. Chris Thielen at Netflix wrote an NPM package called Spinnaker Plugin SDK, which makes it super simple to get started. It scaffolds out the plugin for you, sets up the right build tools. It also includes a development proxy, which proxies Deck and serves plugins from your computer and auto reloads on any changes. So really the only thing you need to bring is a running Spinnaker instance. You don't have to clone every service and get them running locally or anything like that. So I want to show you what this looks like. I'm going to show you how easy it is to get started building a Spinnaker UI plugin. You just need one command. If you have Node installed locally, it's likely that you already have this tool npx. It just allows you to run an npm module without having installed it first. So all you need is to provide a name for the plugin. So I'm going to choose Spinnaker Summit. And it'll go from there. It'll just install everything you need and set up the directories and everything. Okay, I'm actually going to skip ahead because that takes a little bit of time. I've already installed and scaffolded my plugin. So I have a Spinnaker instance running on a Kubernetes cluster, and I've port forwarded a Deck and Gate to my local machine. And all I need to sort of get my plugin running is to run two commands. So one, we have to point a dev proxy at the port where Deck is running. And ultimately, I'm going to be pointing my browser at this proxy, and it'll proxy Deck and sort of load my plugin alongside it. And then I just have to run yarn watch. So this will build my plugin and watch for any changes. Cool. So what do we get? So this is Spinnaker's UI for anyone that doesn't know. And typically, here's the list of stages, and there's going to be a new one called widgetize stage, which is the fake stage that the scaffolding tool creates. Widgetize stage. Great. Here we go, and it's just some simple form fields with some validation. Great. So I just show you what it looks like to build a stage as a UI plugin. So a stage config and the execution view. But often people want to do other things beyond just a stage. So it's good to start by saying that some things just aren't possible. If you think of a UI as a big tree of HTML, you just can't place nodes wherever you want. there are really two patterns that you're going to need to follow. The first pattern is it's registries. A registry isn't sort of an Angular concept or React concept or from TypeScript, and it's not a unique idea, just a pattern that's followed throughout Deck. A registry is just a container for objects that fit a particular interface. Every cloud provider, if we think back to those modules that I was talking about earlier, uses the cloud provider registry to register themselves into the application. So you just push a big map of components and config options into the registry. If you saw Clay McCoy's talk about plugin development, he used this to work on his Nomad cloud provider. So there's lots of registries, lots of ways to hook into Deck. You can add a new notification type or cloud provider as a plugin. For these last three options, keep in mind that while it might be pretty easy to sort of add the UI for a new deployment strategy, there's no corresponding backend extension point at the moment. That's not to say that it can't be done, and maybe you'll be the one that paves the road here. So we talked about registries. The next option is overridable components. So React components across Deck are annotated as overridable. These work pretty much exactly as you would expect. You provide a substitute component which gets swapped in. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. Okay, so this is Deck's code base. I'm going to do a search for the overridable component. And this is all over the place in the code base. And what's cool is that you could add this annotation to a component in open source and override it in a plugin and keep the implementation private. So what does this look like? I have made a really simple example that takes this application icon override and substitutes the Spinnaker application icon with a cat. It's very simple, just looks like this. Here, I initialize it. So every Deck plugin gets this initialize method, which is a good place to run sort of this arbitrary code. So I just, inside the override registration queue, register my cat icon with the corresponding override key. And so what does this look like? It looks like this. Cat is there. One last case I wanted to cover. In a lot of cases, you probably don't want to be writing a UI. You're not doing anything flashy. You just need some input fields. And there's a few places where you can write some Java or Kotlin code inside your backend plugin and define what you want your form fields to look like. The pre-configured job stage is a pretty well-known example. So I wanted to highlight the notification type extension point, which allows you to define the parameters your plugin needs. So in Echo, there's a Spinnaker extension point called notification agent. Echo is Spinnaker's event service, and it handles Spinnaker notifications. So when a pipeline is starting or has failed or is completed, you can configure your pipeline to send you a message via Slack or via email, that kind of thing. And so the notification agent extension point allows you to define a new kind of notification type. And this one here is just an example, but it allows you to define an HTTP notification type that just sends a post request predefined endpoint. The part that's interesting here is that the extension point allows you to define a get parameters method, which is a list of parameters for the notification. And these turn into UI form fields for your users. So what does this look like? So here in the Spinnaker pipeline view, you can add a notification and here is our new notification type, HTTP, and here's the form field that we defined, and it even has the help text. So we're just going to say Summit is the URL path. We're going to send when the pipeline is starting. Great. And so we did all this without writing a line of UI code. Okay, thank you. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to get started, I suggest checking out the Spinnaker plugin examples GitHub org. I've highlighted 2 great starting places here. And let me know how it goes. You can find me on Spinnaker Slack and on GitHub.